Thank you all for coming. My name is Jessica Lutovsky. I'm the program coordinator for the Positive Parenting program here at Seattle Children's. So every April, my program leads the Pinwheels for Positive Parenting campaign in honor of Child Abuse Prevention Month. So one of the biggest pieces to prevention is education. So that's why our goal here is to educate as many families as we can about child development and the importance of parent-child relationships. So I'm excited to introduce our two speakers. Abby Grant serves as an outpatient pediatrician and medical director of the UW Harborview Pediatric Clinic. She provides primary care to children of diverse backgrounds, including many refugee and immigrant families and families challenged by complex social and medical conditions. Abby serves as a facilitator to all of our pediatric residents here at Seattle Children's in a class called Promoting First Relationships that focuses on child development and parent-child relationships. And then Ann Granderson has her master's in teaching, and she has translated her knowledge of child development and passion for supporting families into her work as a trainer and facilitator. She serves parents directly in her community as a positive parenting educator and coach, in addition to working alongside Abby as a facilitator in promoting first relationships. Ann is also a mom to 4 little ones, ages ranging from 1 to 6. So without further delay, please give a warm welcome to Ann Granderson and Abby Grant.
I think you guys might have been the quietest group to my 4 children. Usually I say I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old and 18-month-old twins, and that's usually the kicker. So thank you for taking time to be here. It just always means so much to me to look out at a room and see that parents are willing to scramble out after work, find a babysitter, or arrange for someone to be with their kids, figure out how to wave goodbye without leaving tears, all the things that it takes to be here. So I just want to say a big thank you for taking time to value our time being here. It's very much a privilege, and I take it as an honor to be able to share whatever I possibly can with you today. So moving forward, what you can expect for tonight, 3 main goals. The first is really just what is positive parenting. You hear a lot of this now, this like new way of parenting, positive parenting. So we'll get into some of that along with some of the developmental and long-term benefits for kids and what I like to think for parents. We're also going to talk about how that translates into brain development and other long-term outcomes. And then we'll finish with what I think is often the most fun part with some real strategies. So I really, really hope that if you came here today and it was for a reason, that you go home with a couple tips and tricks that feel really tangible and really helpful in your interaction with your kids, whether they're a baby on the way, or with an older child, or even a partner. I often find that a lot of my academic brain around parenting strategies translate across all relationships. So take it for what it's worth. Whatever you leave tonight with, I just hope it's something that leaves you feeling a little more positive, a little bit more encouraged, and a little bit less alone in this hard work of parenting. All right, so this gets at why we're talking about this. We know that all parents get a baby somehow comes into their life, either in a hospital, in a courtroom, however a baby lands in your lap or a child lands in your lap. We often feel both an amount of awe and wonder and also fear and anxiety, like they're really going to let me walk out with this thing? What am I supposed to do now? Because as they say, there really is no manual for what we're supposed to do. All right, so let's dig in. Here we have this definition of parenting. Anyone who has ever Googled parenting strategies or who has gotten on Amazon knows that there are about 1,000,001, probably now 1,000,002 books trying to tell us how to raise our kids. When I see that, I often think, okay, there's all this information out here, awesome. Some of it's going to feel really good, some of it's going to feel really bad, and I hope that tonight, no matter what I say, you leave feeling like you get to decide, and that you get to decide what feels good and what feels right for your family, and also what feels effective and based on really good information that makes sense to you. Because if there's 1,000,001, not all of them can be exactly perfect for you. All right, so here we go. The process of promoting and supporting the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of a child from infancy to adulthood. No pressure, right? We're all experts in all these things. Physical health, how many pediatricians in the room do we have? Emotional health, social, intellectual, no pressure. So basically the hardest, most challenging, most rewarding, most exhausting, amazing privilege of a job that anyone can have, as well as daunting, terrifying, anxiety-provoking, and sometimes irritating. So here we go. This is the part of the night where I do ask for a little help from you. So we all come here, hopefully, looking to learn or feel inspired or think about something. So what I'd love to hear from you, what are the challenges you have at home? What are the buttons that your kids just know how to push? And I like to remind ourselves, there are buttons. There are buttons. So what's happening in your house? Please shout out, whining, hitting, biting. Come on, let me hear it. Sibling dynamics, violence, hitting. What else? Biting other kids. What else? Not listening, or what I like to say is the actual hearing of our children often is very good, but what we're looking for is to follow through and take an instruction. I think all of us, can we all raise our hand to that one? Yeah, physical bubble, personal space for you or for between siblings or friends. Anything else?
Acting out just to get attention.
Yeah, which I also love when people say that. You're like, okay, you know something about your kid. They want your attention. That is the first step to figuring out how can we give it to him or her in a way that works for you. If you know that, you've got the first step down. What else is hard? Anybody getting out of the house in the morning? Get your shoes on. Please stay in your bed if you come out one more time.
If you don't take her to the park every day.
Yeah, demands. These little people know how to state their demands, right? They have strong voices. Impulse control. Yeah, lack of being the key factor of wanting to do something, and it's the most important thing they could possibly do in that moment. Good. Anything else that's feeling hard? Is that a pretty good list?
Not eating.
Meal times. Yep. Not eating, throwing food, refusing certain foods, being a selective picky eater. Yeah. Potty training. Yep. Yep. Yes, yes, holding it. Yep, know lots about that. Good. All right, so the thing I also want to point out during that, one, it's pretty easy, right? I think we all probably could have said 5 other things that we didn't actually say out loud, but also in this room, there was so much head nodding happening. So just notice that that if you leave with nothing else, be like, oh, yeah, I have that same thing. I'm not alone. I'm not the only parent experiencing all this challenging stuff. Okay, so the next one, I'm especially going to ask you in this moment to just take a breath. You may have rushed here, you may have gotten lost getting here, you may have wandered the halls of Seattle Children's longer than you hoped to get here. So if you can just take a breath, ground your feet, sit up tall. If you feel comfortable, I would really encourage you to let your eyes close. Once they're closed, I want you to imagine that you are sitting in your forever home, whatever that looks like for you and whatever dream you have of that forever home being. You are sitting there and you hear a knock at the door. You walk slowly to the door and you know who's going to be there, and you open that door up, and there are your adult children, or there is your adult child standing in front of you. Now, as you imagine them, not just what they will look like, but what is it that you hope? What do you dream for this child or these children standing on your front step? What gifts do you hope they carry with them? What skills? What traits? What amazing human in the world do you hope that they have become? Okay, please open your eyes. I still even just, I can't even. I'm like, are they all gonna fit on the front porch? But what I wanna hear from you now is, what are those things? What kind of person do you wanna have standing in front of you when they're an adult? Shout them out. Be brave, please. Happy. We want happy, fulfilled kids. Respectful. Healthy. Physically, mentally healthy kids. Competent, capable. That they've moved out, they're not coming from the basement up to your... Maybe we secretly kind of hope they're still in the basement because we're going to miss them, but at the same time, we want them to be moving out into the world as independent, functional adults. What else do you hope for them? Yeah, sense of humor, joy, laughter. Confident. They carry themselves. They know who they are. They're confident in the world, whether you're by their side or not. Kind, caring. You want to see their heart in their actions and who they are. What was that?
Assertive.
Assertive. Yeah, they have a voice. They can stand up for themselves, maybe stand up for others. Good list. Anything else? Yeah. So this is our dream for our kids, right? I think no one goes in to having a kid, whether intentional or on accident, or however they end up with a child, not hoping that their child has something better than they did, or if they've had so many gifts, that they have at least what they had. So if we want these gifts in our children, it's easy to go back to our list of challenges and think about, oh, I'm going to lose my mind, I'm going crazy, and then look at this list of gifts, and we don't often realize that every challenging moment and every hard thing we're going through with our kids is part of their process of becoming these humans we want them to be in the world. So our big job, sorry to break it to you tonight, I am not actually going to tell you how to change your kids and get them to be these perfect, well-behaved little things, but I'm going to hopefully plant some seeds on the work that we can do on ourselves and in relationship with our kids that can help them get from these really inconvenient, annoying moments where they're very assertive. I am not putting on those shoes, and they have a strong voice, and they are confident, they are self-assured in their body and their mind, and it is a pain. But somehow helping us step out of it and seeing all those magical things that, while super inconvenient now, is actually some of what we want to develop as they become adults. Now, the challenge is how to do that with the respect and the kindness and the emotional intelligence that we want them to happen. But developmentally, that's not there now. But what is there now is the opportunity to take this moment of potential conflict of, like, put my shoes on for me, and think about, okay, what's our chance here? What do we get to learn in this moment? And how am I presenting myself in a way that's going to work for them? So I want you to do a quick activity for me. If you can all make an okay sign. Actually make the okay sign. And put it on your chin. Where are a lot of your okay signs, or where did it go first? Went to your cheek, even though I said chin. So this is not to put too much pressure, but our kids especially are super perceptive, highly observant and aware. So the way that we behave and carry ourselves in the world is really what they're going to emulate and model. So if we want kind, respectful kids who know how to take a stressful situation and take a breath and walk into it, oh, sorry guys, what do we have to get better at? Are we going to do it all the time? No way. We're going to lose it, and then we get a chance to come back. But everything I talk about tonight, and that Abby is going to relate with us, is about this relationship and this connection and our opportunity to grow in our ability to build and strengthen that relationship. Okay. I always talk way too long about that part because it's why I love and do this work. I truly think it's this opportunity to just all be the best version of ourselves. Which, when does that happen? Hopefully soon. All right, so just a quick summary around what is positive parenting. You will see tons of different definitions. I don't think that there is any one right definition. One specific philosophy that I follow pretty closely is positive discipline. So if you want an actual capital P, capital D practice of parenting, most of what I talk about tonight is grounded and rooted in the philosophy of positive discipline, which is essentially this idea that everybody wants to feel significant and like they belong. And that's the underlying core of all of positive discipline. But when it comes to positive parenting, this big umbrella, no right way to parent, but lots of ideas that we can learn from that we now know a lot about the impacts come from. Have respectful, loving relationships is a key component. We also look at mistakes as opportunities to learn. So instead of shaming or punishing kids when they mess up, looking at it as an it's okay, it's what can we take from this and what will we do different next time or how will we make it right. Big feelings are allowed, so this is where that kind of social, emotional intelligence comes in, that families and within parenting relationships is where it's okay to feel big feelings, and that as kids feel those feelings, they realize that when they feel them and they're really big, that they're actually gonna be okay, and that it's not an emergency because you can handle it, that they can feel it, and then it's gonna be okay. Next, this is a challenging one without a lot more conversation, but generally within positive parenting, the idea of rewards, bribes, and punishments, not in consequences that things happen when you make a mistake, but punishments as in, I want to make you feel as bad as I can possibly make you feel punishments are generally avoided. And then lastly, which we'll spend most of our time talking about tonight, is that misbehavior is seen as a language of distress. So it's a way of communicating. So like our attention seeker over here, very clear communication. So it's all about how we respond to those cues and what our kids are trying to tell us. All right, this is just a big handout. You actually have it in your packet. It's the very last page, but on the front side, I believe. So I'm not gonna talk all the way through it, but I just think it's a really nice overview of what positive parenting generally encompasses. A couple of things that I'm really happy that they included in here is this idea of working towards a balance of meeting parental needs and child needs, because sometimes people swing one way or the other. They're all about like making it work for me and being pretty rigid, or being very permissive and catering to their kids. And I always say that as a parent, it's not actually our job to make our kids happy by setting limits and bringing some opportunities for challenge and overcoming that we're helping them learn about happiness, learn what it feels to feel fulfilled and truly happy, but we're not like feeding them candy for every meal to make sure they're happy every moment of their lives. A few other things that I love, just this idea of delighting in moments of connection. We don't spend enough time as parents, especially with infants and young children, about how important it actually is to just enjoy time with your kid, and especially when you're going through the motions every day, working, co-parenting, single parenting, whatever it is, there's all these other things happening that can take away from this. But in one day, if you feel like you failed in so many different directions, but you can find that one moment where you were connected and enjoying each other's company, you can be like, all right, I'm okay. I did that today. All right. So in summary of this general concept of positive parenting, I really like to rely on this idea of respect, which I'm glad someone brought that out on our list earlier. And the way I like to think of it is when we have respect for ourselves, we know how to set boundaries. It's almost like in any relationship. We know how to have high expectations for ourselves and high expectations for the people around us. In parenting, it means we're the leader of our family. And really kind of setting some guidelines for what our family structure is going to look like. And then on the other side, as a parent, trying to be a positive parent, which does not mean rainbows and sunshine, mind you. The positive parenting makes it seem like everything's going to be so great. Everyone's going to be happy and respectful and cooperative. It's going to be great. No, it's messy. Any kind of parenting is messy. So as we go through these strategies, don't think that I'm implying that any of that messiness or chaos goes away. But what I love to rest on is this idea that it can feel better and it can often feel more effective. So there's still going to be all the things. But if we can settle into this space where we can feel a little better as a parent, a little more confident, capable, and we can see some of the benefits coming out in the behavior of our children, I think we're doing real good. I don't want to skip too much over this idea of respect for a child, because that's where we really show kindness. Often that looks like hearing them, being patient, giving a little more time, being playful, all the things that they need and want for us. is being respectful for them, trying to get a little bit into their world instead of always expecting them to come into our world and follow every rule that we set up for them. The last thing on this is, for many of us, we have a tendency, so I like to think of it as a pendulum, where there's one side that's very authoritative, it's very firm, rigid. This is often where you'll see yelling and getting upset. It's my way or the highway, where we can go sometimes, especially if we're stressed. And then there's this other side where we really, all we want is our kid to be happy. We don't want to say no. We just want to let them do their thing, be creative, do whatever. Bedtime, what's that? On this other side. So I often urge that while the pendulum is swinging, and some of us swing this side more easily, and some of us slide this way more easily, but for me, the goal is always to generally try and land in the middle, because in that middle space, where we're over here, often we end up hating ourselves. We end up yelling, we end up being overly firm, we fall in a place where it doesn't feel very good. But then we go over into this other space where we don't like our kids, where they're running all over us, they're taking advantage, they're being disrespectful, and we don't like our kids. Neither of those sound optimal. So while we're gonna go back and forth and fall naturally in one or the other, if we can center ourselves as much as possible in the middle, it's often where both kids and parents feel that mutual respect. So hopefully that's kind of a good visual as you're moving through the world of what that feels like. Okay, so we're transitioning a little bit now into this concept of positive parenting and how it translates into benefits for our kids. So that's kind of the jump, and then at the end we'll dive into some real specific strategies that you guys can test out. Where's my mouse?
If you're like most parents, you have an image of the kind of person you want your child to grow up to be. Successful, smart, kind, thoughtful, a good friend. The great news is that you play a major role in making this happen. And it's not by using flashcards or following some academic training plan. It turns out, according to a large body of research, that the key is providing something known simply as responsive care. Responsive care. Never heard of it? Most people haven't. So what exactly is responsive care? Responsive care is the process of watching and tuning in to your child's cues and thinking about what his behavior might mean, and then responding in a sensitive way. By doing this, you meet your child's physical needs, but just as important, his emotional needs as well. These parents watch closely to understand what their baby's actions are telling them. Rubbing his eyes and yawning is this baby's way of saying, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm sleepy." And his parents know just what he means and give him just what he needs. While this may seem pretty ordinary, when you respond to your child's unique needs, the effect is quite extraordinary. Why? Because study after study has found that this kind of parenting leads to children building what we call a secure attachment, a warm, trusting relationship with his or her parents. And secure attachments in early childhood lead to a whole host of positive outcomes for children that can last into adulthood. It all starts in a baby's first days of life. Research shows that babies whose parents respond promptly to their cries and provide comfort actually cry less when they become toddlers. Surprising, isn't it? So many people think that comforting a crying baby is spoiling them, but it's not. When parents respond to and comfort their babies, their little ones learn that they can trust their parents. This creates feelings of safety and security. Over time, these children experience less anxiety and distress. They have learned that their parents will understand and respond to their needs. Children who experience responsive care and have strong, positive relationships with their parents also tend to be more independent and develop stronger problem-solving skills, key factors in doing well in school. Research also shows that when parents provide responsive care by taking turns in their interactions with their young children, following their child's lead, expressing positive feelings, and providing age-appropriate toys, books, and other activities, children are more likely to develop strong language, cognitive, and social skills later on. Parents help build their children's self-esteem when they offer support and encouragement to keep on trying when faced with a difficult task. The ability to persist at solving a problem builds children's confidence that they can master the challenges they face. So if responsive care is critical for all of these really positive outcomes, how do you do it? The key? Be a good observer. Tune in to your child's unique way of communicating what he is thinking and feeling. Discover what she likes and dislikes. It's like being a detective. Research shows that when parents take the time to think about what their child's behavior might mean and how they might be feeling, their children are better able to understand the emotions and perspectives of others. Another important feature of responsive care has to do with you, with parents managing their own thoughts and reactions. That means tuning into your own feelings, especially when your child's behavior pushes your buttons. Learning to manage your feelings and reactions is a critical part of responsive parenting. Feelings are not right or wrong. It's what you do with your feelings that can be helpful or not so helpful. When you stay calm and manage your feelings and reactions, it's easier to choose the response that will be most useful for the situation and for your little one. So what does all this mean? You matter. When you provide your young child with responsive care, it's the gift that keeps on giving. The bond you share with your baby becomes a blueprint she will take with her forever, her first and most important model of a loving relationship.
So one part that the video really touched upon is how important it is as a parent to really try to see and understand that the behavior of your children really has meaning. And so the iceberg picture helps remind us of this, that the behaviors that we're seeing are really the tip of the iceberg. And so think about the last time that you raised your own voice. And so that's a behavior. And so if we think about, really think about it, the last time you raised your voice, and think about what you felt when that happened. And so maybe you were angry or upset or tired or sad. And so that's the feeling that was underneath that behavior. And then when you think about your need, maybe you were not feeling safe, maybe you were feeling insecure, maybe you were feeling like you weren't being noticed or heard. And so then think again of a time when you raised your voice, but this time it was out of excitement or joy. And so the behavior is the same. You're raising your voice, but this time the underlying feelings are of happiness or excitement. And your needs in that moment are actually that you feel safe and secure and heard. And so, it's helpful for us to think through that for ourselves because we all have behaviors, good and bad, and then think about that for our children. And so this is working through it in the opposite way. And so if we think of an example, like trying to get your kid in the car seat after a long day at daycare. And so, your kid has a total freak out. And so if we start at the bottom, that's the acting out. They're having a huge tantrum because you're trying to stick them in the car seat. And then if we start at the beginning and think about what might their unmet need be. And so maybe it's that they were actually really excited to see you and that they hadn't seen their mom all day. And so they were feeling sad or distressed or tired. And then their underlying need was really that they needed some attention and a little bit of love before they had to get in the car seat to go home. And so the ability for parents to really be able to think about behavior as having meaning and having feelings and unmet needs helps you to be able to respond more kindly to your kid. And so it's really challenging to actually do that in the moment. And so we're going to walk through one framework to do this. And so your kid is having a total tantrum in the grocery store. And so first you notice that they're pushing your buttons, and so you pause and you start really with yourself and you think, like, what am I feeling in this moment? And so maybe you're feeling really angry. You don't want to be at the grocery store in the first place. Or maybe you're feeling embarrassed because everyone is looking at you as your kid is having a tantrum. Maybe you're feeling frustrated that your kid won't just sit in the grocery cart and let this activity be faster. And so you start with just really feeling whatever emotions you're having, and you're trying not to judge yourself that you're feeling those things. And then you really do something to calm yourself down. And so I think this part of it you figure out for yourselves. But take a couple deep breaths, close your eyes, count down from 3, something that you have felt whatever you're feeling, you're accepting it, and now you're calming yourself to better be able to respond to your kid. And so after you have done that, then you really think, okay, what is my kid feeling right now? And you think about the iceberg and what might be motivating this behavior. So they're really tired too. They thought you were going to go to the park, but instead you stopped at the grocery store. And then whatever feelings they're having, you can accept those. So you might not like the behavior, but you can accept that your kid has feelings that they can't control. So after you have had your own pause, your own emotions are regulated, you've thought about what your kid is feeling in this moment, now you're in a position to respond much more kindly with less judgment to your kid. And so you really think, how can I help? And then you act. And so you don't run away from your kid. You don't do punishing, what Anne was talking about, but you're right there, showing them that you're accepting their feelings, not their behavior, and that you use a combination of your physical closeness, your voice, and your words to help them know that you're going to be there to help them manage those big emotions. So often parents find it helpful to label their kids' feelings, soothing touch, and really just staying nearby until the moment for their kid passes. And then the last part is really helping your kid to learn to move on. So the moment when they're totally freaking out is not the time that you talk about that's not the behavior you like in the grocery store and that there's other ways to do it. You wait for them to settle down by being close by. And then after everyone has, the moment has passed, your kid is distracted, then that's sort of the teachable moment where you can go back and talk about acceptable feelings and behaviors, and then problem solve for yourself how having recognized what your kid was feeling and experiencing and the needs in that moment, what you might do differently. So the grocery store example, like, just thinking ahead of time, what's the time of day? They're going to be tired. Is there something you could bring to try to prevent it? Knowing that kids are going to have tons of behaviors that you don't love, and you can't avoid all of them, but some of that reflection for yourself of how this could have looked different. So that is one approach to helping your kid through these challenging behaviors. And really, it all starts with thinking about yourself and managing your own emotions and the pause to be able to respond with kindness. And so Anne's going to walk through some other tools to help with your kids.
Thanks, Abby. Don't we all wish we worked with a pediatrician who was this reflective and didn't just say like, oh, we'll give them a timeout for a minute for every year of age they are, and you try that and then it doesn't work, and then you don't want to tell them because you're embarrassed that you tried it and it didn't work. So I just love working with Abby because she really thinks about, as a provider, she tries to get in our heads and think about what are these parents that come into my office experiencing and how can I support them, and I appreciate that so much. The other thing about her example that I love is I always tell parents, don't parent in public. It is so hard to parent in a culture where you almost expect, if you're in the aisle of a grocery store, people need to hear you say, you don't behave like that in the store. It feels like some cultural norm that we all have been asked to accept, that if you're not being harsh and very firm with your child in public, that you're failing. So this thought of just like getting down, getting connected, or like picking them up and leaving your cart full of groceries is not okay, but please, it's okay. If that feels like the best solution for you, the checker will probably be happier with a cart full of groceries than a screaming child. And you will feel better going out to the car and having the skills and ability to get to the place you need to be in connection with your child than in the aisle with all the other parents and grandparents and people without kids watching you and seeing how you're going to react. So I definitely think parenting in public is not our strong suit for most of us. It's a very challenging situation. All right, so let's dive into what I think is the fun part, and then our goal is to actually wrap up at 8 so that we have a full half an hour for Q&A. So those specific challenges that you're experiencing at home, we'd like to try and dig into them a little bit. All right, so my first and favorite strategy of the evening is lightness and play. And this is really because it's our kids' love language. So if we're talking about how we can try and get inside of our kids' heads and try and help them feel safe, secure, loved, worthy, important, we can communicate that to them most effectively through joining them. And joining them often looks like pretend, play, lightness, silliness, all the things that our kids do so naturally and so well. I'm not a funny person. So this takes effort and work and creativity. But I do find for most parents, it's our way of kind of just getting in on their level. So what this looks like is pretend play to get to a goal. So if something needs to happen, how can you turn it into a pretend game to get there? For example, if we need to brush teeth and no one wants to go to the place where teeth brushing needs to happen, you all of a sudden become the ballet instructor. Okay, everybody, we're gonna do sachets to the bathroom. Who wants to show me your best cha-cha? Whatever that might be, think about, okay, what does my kid love? What are they into? Are they into trains? Are they into superheroes? Are they into whatever? Instead of just asking them to do this thing they don't want to do, how can we come together? How can I get in their head and say, they just don't want to do this. Teeth brushing is not nearly as fun as this game I'm playing right now. So how can I help bring them in on my game so that they're getting a piece of something that feels really important and powerful to them? The second part of this that I love is granting a wish. This, I think, is particularly effective for like the 2.5 to 4 range. Like this last one, my daughter would love. It's like they want a treat. Like, I want a treat, I want a treat. Man, I bet you wish that you could have candy for breakfast. I bet you wish that I packed a donut in your lunch, and I bet you wish we were having ice cream for dinner. Wouldn't that be awesome if you just had a magic wand and you turn it into this whole, like, pull out the magic wand? Oh man, baby, if I could just like poof and turn our car into a big chocolate bar for you, holy cow, would that be awesome. And usually by the time you've gone down that road, they've forgotten about what it was they actually wanted. Or that's the hope. But you're joining them. You're giving them what they want. They want to feel like they're heard, that their demand is reasonable, even if it's not in our minds. To them it is. So somehow granting that wish shows that it's not ridiculous to want these things. It's a very real and valid thing for them. And we still get to say, like, sorry, dude, you don't get to have chocolate for breakfast. And we can still join them and not just be no. No is easy, but often the outcome we get doesn't bring ease. Does that make sense? It's easy to say no, so people say, oh, this sounds so hard. It sounds like so much work. I'm like, well, how's it going when you just say no? Like, how's that going? Does that feel easy? So I just wonder where you want to put in the effort. And for me, it's so much easier when I'm not at my end. So I think what Abby gets to is like, all this stuff comes really easily when I've had a good day. Like tomorrow, I missed dinner, I missed bedtime, I'm gonna see a girlfriend, all the things. So tomorrow I might wake up and be ready to pull all these things out of my pockets. But if I had done all those things, or my husband was out of town, or all the other things, I might wake up and just be done. There's nothing to pull. So I think it's really good to remember that and cut ourselves some slack when this is harder than it can seem when you're just thinking about it in the abstract. The last is just this idea of roughhousing and laughter, that we really want to help our kids release those big feelings. And for a lot of us, we see it being released in tears or screams or protests. So if we can kind of beat them to it and release it through like tickling or roughhousing, rough and tumble physical play, that we can help them get some of that big stuff out in a way that feels a lot better than them just putting on the brakes and screaming. I also think this is a really helpful one for my husband, who sometimes it's my way is the principle of a dad that comes out in him as well. So he has come up with a strategy where when he wants the girls to do something and he's about to turn into a yell, he turns it into this like booming song voice. It's time to brush your teeth. And really he wants to be like, it's time to brush your teeth. But for him, it's like a translation that then they're like, oh, Dad's singing a silly song. And it's his way of like being loud so he can release some of that big feeling and be loud and big and physical, but in a way that feels way better. He's not going to regret doing that. He's not going to regret being silly and loud, but he might regret being harsh and loud. Okay, so there's a few examples there at the bottom. Second strategy, another favorite. This is kind of two strategies lumped into one. But this idea of do versus don't and ask versus tell. So telling a child what to do instead of what not to do. I think this is especially helpful because it meets kids where they are developmentally. So this idea of listening that came up earlier, that we know they hear us. But I also believe developmentally they hear us and they might even want to obey or stop doing what we've asked, but they're not quite there in coming up with a replacement behavior. So you might say, stop running, and the only part they hear is the running. So they're already doing it. It's so easy. I'm just going to keep doing it. So if you say, like, scurry back here like a little mouse, on your tiptoes, they might actually do it because, one, you've used lightness and play, and two, they're like, oh, I'll do that. So it's thinking of a replacement behavior and offering it instead of just saying stop. The ask versus tell is where you're really trying to meet their need for autonomy and feeling some power and being in control. How many things do you ask your kids to do in a day? If we kept a list, would we probably just be like, oh, geez. If we were at work and we had a boss, would we choose the boss who trusted us, hired us because we're good at what we do, and they work hard and we see them working hard and we work to meet those expectations? Or do we want the boss who sits us down every morning and has us run through our to-do list and then checks in with us later to make sure we did all those little things, and if we didn't, makes us feel real bad about it? So as parents, we're really good at being like, you need to do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. A lot of times they're highly capable. So even though they're not quite skilled enough to preemptively do the things they need to do, there are ways for us to help encourage that independence and give them some autonomy. So instead of being like, all right, time to put on your shoes, go get your shoes, where are your shoes, put on your shoes, tie them, do you need me to tie them, where are they, where's the other one, we have one, where are the socks? Hey, buddy, awesome, you're all dressed for school, this is so great, what's next? Like, all right, you think you need 1 minute or 2? Maybe 3? Let's do 2. All right, I'm setting the timer. Let me see you with your shoes on. You told me that's next, right? Wait, was it shoes or was it teeth? Oh, yeah, you're right, it's shoes. I'll see you in 2 minutes. So any way we can just ask them and have them take the lead and just give them that sense of power and accomplishment, I find that most kids feel just as good about that independence and showing you what they did. In our house, surprise me is a strategy that has turned into our kind of family strategy, where they're not wanting to do something, and I'd be like, oh man, I bet you know how to do this yourself. Do you want to surprise us? And then we go away, and then it's like they'll be under their covers in their room, and I come in and I'm like, guys, I thought we talked about this. I thought it was bedtime, whole thing. And then they pull down their covers, and then they're jamming, ha ha ha, we surprised you. So anyway, I'm giving you all the good examples, by the way. Don't you even start to think that my house does not look crazy and chaotic, and there are lots of failures. I can tell you about just as many failures as successes, but hopefully the successes are more helpful for you. But please do not get any ideas about what my family looks like from only what I'm sharing tonight. All right, so here's some examples with young children. We're in the 18 to 19-month-old. Everything, if I don't want it, goes on the floor, or like throwing things on the floor. So we've been doing a lot of activities at the table. So like, oh, you want to throw that applesauce? Here, try putting it in this bowl instead. So giving a replacement behavior that works for you, or like a lot of kids like tapping, or if they're standing up, sitting down, trying to give them something that is appealing to them, not just stop. What's next is a helpful phrase. The other is like if you're telling them to stop doing something or not do something. This one is a very hard one, but like, do you feel safe? And sometimes they'll say yeah, and sometimes you get to be like, okay. And that's a hard thing to do as a parent. But if it's not hurting anything, I mean, we all know like the boundaries of safety, right? But if it's something you just kind of don't think they should be doing, that they might fall like this far, but they say, yeah, I feel safe, sometimes instead of saying no, it might actually be okay, and they might do it. And you'll be like, oh man, their balance is better than I thought. So that is a whole other workshop to talk about safety, but just opportunities for them to feel confident and capable really stand out here. And then our last one before we dive into Q&A is just around routines and predictability. And this is something that also can help kids feel that sense of autonomy and their sense of control, is if during those times of transition, which is often where we hit conflict with our kids, because they're so good at being present in the moment. Whatever they're doing at that time is the most important thing, and then often it's when we swoop in and ask them to do something different that they don't really want to do. So as far as routines go, the key features are creating it together, even with really pre-verbal kids, drawing some pictures, writing it out, having verbal kids tell you, like, what are all the things we have to do to get ready for bed, or what are all the things that we have to do to get ready for school. Write them down, even if they don't know how to read. If you're writing it down, they're like, oh, what I say is important. Mom is writing it. Dad is typing it up on his laptop. All of a sudden, their voice is being heard and documented. And then coming up with some ideas of order and having them really help shape the routine, so that then next time you're going through this motion, back to pretend and play, or lightness and play. I love if you create a routine to practice it. Like if it's a bedtime routine, practice it in the middle of the afternoon, and you pretend to be the kid and they pretend to be the parent walking through the routine, because then they feel even more ownership, and they get to practice at a time when they're not really having to do it. So then when they do, it kind of feels like play again. And you can try and kind of keep that momentum of like, okay, we're pretending, what's next? You know, you gotta look at your pictures or our list and see, and you tell me what's next. Appropriate expectations. This is sometimes hard to balance, I think. We fluctuate from expecting too much of our kids around emotion regulation, them thinking things are logical that we think are logical, all of those things, but then we don't give enough credit for what they are capable of, like independently getting pajamas on, or making their own breakfast, packing their own lunch, all of these things that they actually can do, but we do for them. So I feel like sometimes we end up in this mismatch, but trying your best to think about what the expectations are and if they're reasonable for the age and development of your child. Make it visual, whether they're pre-verbal, verbal, reading, not reading. anything that's visual will help them. And then know that it's gonna probably be awesome for a couple days and then it might tank, or even a couple of weeks and then it might tank. So it's really something to just build connection, start building this normalcy of routine, and then you'll likely have to come back and tweak it and adjust it. And they might wanna add something to the routine that you wouldn't, like, I don't know, pet the cat before school or something. But as long as you all agree about where that fits into the routine, fantastic. If petting the cat is important to them and it can be motivating that maybe it's the last thing on the list, maybe those shoes will be on because then it's time to pet the cat or feed the fish or whatever is fun. I don't know. So using their interests and using what they want to feel important as part of a routine. Okay, look at us on time. That never happens. All right, so we're going to open up for Q&A. Both Abby and I will be available. As you take the mic, if you could share the age of your kid, try and be brief, but give us enough detail about the situation, experience that you're going through that you'd like some input on, and then whatever your question is. And we'll just keep going as long as people want to stay. We also understand if anyone needs to sneak out, and just, again, thank you for spending this time with us. So let's open it up. This is where I get a little nervous and excited because I love brainstorming with families about what they're experiencing. Woohoo!
Are a little bit older, so we have 11 and 12, and we get pushback about just about everything we say. Okay, it's time to set the table, but I did it last night, but she did it the other night, but I didn't have to pick up as many dishes, but she has more pots. Like, oh my gosh. And sometimes I think, you have fought me for so long, you would have been done an hour ago if you had just done it. And we both get to the point where we are no longer funny or playing games or having a good time.
Yep.
And we're not rational humans anymore. So we would love some guidance about what you do when you get the pushback and talk back about everything and want to say, just shut your little pie hole and do it and go away.
Yes,
Which
you
is not
just
very
need
gracious.
to do the thing. Yeah. I think anytime I work with parents, and mine are younger, my oldest is just turning 7, but I actually think they're, in your situation right now, there's some advantage to their age because they're so capable. Like, they can empty the dishwasher, they can do the things. If they could just ignore the other one and focus on their job, they'd probably have it done super quickly. But also that means they have a lot of skill in developing a plan themselves. So I think it sounds like a family meeting. Maybe you like bake a cake or brownies to make it seem like it's a fun thing and say, all right, guys, like, we have this thing where we all have these jobs and we need to get it done, but it seems like it's pretty miserable. So why is it miserable? Write it down. What do you think? What are your ideas? What could we do? Like, do we need a chart? Do we need sticks that we draw? Do we need to put it on the calendar so we all know what our job is and we know that everyone gets a turn doing every job? What are your ideas? And obviously come with some, like the ones I threw out or whatever seems like it makes sense for you. But I think a sit down with them, having each of them have a voice and have a chance to say why it's annoying. Well, my friends don't have to do chores. I want to be playing my game instead of doing this, and talking about the values in your family. This is where you get to be the leader of your family and say, I hear ya. And like, I didn't, whatever. You can tell a story about when you were a kid. Sometimes kids like to hear what your experience was. And like, I used to fight my mom every day about having to make my bed every day. But now I make my bed every day and it makes me feel so good. So some of that like relational storytelling and then really writing it down and asking for them to come up with a plan. And with an 11 and 12-year-old, they might come up with some crazy stuff and you might just have to roll with it. It might be so complicated, but at least they feel like they have a say and you can try it and it might not work and then you come back and you fix it again. Does that feel helpful? Yeah.
So we have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. Our oldest, she right now is having a hard time getting off the bottle, even though we've been able to get it off throughout days. We were doing really well before the baby came along, and that's kind of what revamped it. And even though we've been talking about it for a long time and preparing her mentally for it, like the closer we get to the cutoff date where we told her she's got to be done, the worse she's getting. And it's making it hard for all of us to live together.
Yeah. So the bottle, the attachment to the bottle.
Yeah.
How one to
It's
me,
the-
like 18 months, 12 months, 13 months. How old is the baby? Oh,
not
no,
even
no,
a baby.
3.5. You said
Oh,
you have an
okay.
also the
Oh,
younger. You have a
she's
3.5
12
and a
months.
1-year-old. Okay,
She's
so
12
she
months.
just turned 1. So is she still using a bottle?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess the big question, and maybe Abby even knows more about this, about the like reasons to stop with a bottle. So what for your family, is it cultural? Is it her teeth? Is it like thinking really about what is important about not having a bottle? Abby, do you have any like medical reasons for a baby to not have, or a 3.5-year-old to not have a bottle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just such an easy way to get in a lot of fluid really quickly that then kids can overeat, and just teeth. And
Will she take water in it, or it has to be milk?
Oh, it has to be warm milk in a certain temperature, and she knows how to put it in the microwave herself, and I want to throttle her because she knows how to do it herself. I'm like,
Yes.
obviously you're too big.
Yes.
This is too much. And I'm running into the issue where she's not eating now because she just rather have milk, and
Yep.
so it's
Yeah, that sounds like a tricky one.
What have you-
total protest.
I would just, what have you, like, it sounds like you've been battling this for a while. What have you already tried?
I switched to different kinds of sippy cups. I tried water for a while. I've tried, we've tried cutting out all daytime so far, and just, okay, you only get the one at bedtime, and then after your birthday, we're done, because it's time to go to school, and it's time to be a big girl. And so we're trying to positively encourage her, well, you can't be drinking bottles and go to preschool, and
So is she currently only taking a bottle right before bed? Like, has that been successful?
it depends on if someone gives in while I'm at work. Apparently nap time, she gets one too. Ah, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've certainly made some effort. Again, in my responses without knowing your daughter or her, I always am trying to figure out, okay, like what does this signify for her? It could just be very habitual. It's like us when we wake up in the morning and we have a cup of coffee. If someone told us to stop doing that, what? Or tea or whatever that is. So I think getting in her head and thinking that what we're asking her to do is as significant as a habit that we do every day that we're asking her to stop. So having some compassion and saying like, man, you love your bottle. You love it. It feels good. It's warm. It's cozy. You've had it your whole life. It must feel really scary or sad to think about getting rid of that. And if we can think about something we've experienced where we're like, okay, a bottle, it seems like they should just get rid of it. But if we can get in their head and think, oh, it actually is this like really ritualistic, special thing for them, and help them feel understood, especially because she's verbal and you can verbalize that and do it in a way with you're really close, you're holding the bottle, you're talking about it, you're letting her know how she feels. And then because she's getting ready to go to preschool, again, she probably has some good ideas. Like, what is it about the bottle you love? Like, do you love the milk or do you love how it feels warm? Like, what is it you like about it? And then are there other things that might feel like, I mean, they have those beanie, microwavable, lovey. I mean, this is where you get to experiment because it sounds like you've tried some really great strategies already, but looping her in and maybe with some of her feedback, does that sound like it might?
That sounds like a good next step because I'm running out of ideas.
Just to see if that connection helps you get to an idea that feels more effective.
Great, thank you.
I think too, like your idea about preschool and that's exciting and she wants to be a big girl, that like instead of making the deadline when the bottle goes away being like a punishment, kind of making that like an exciting, like we're all really excited that the bottle's going to go away because you're going to be a big girl and you're going to get to go to preschool, and kind of make it like spin it positively and then but still do it.
And if
Yes.
if anything about the new baby comes in, like, well, the baby gets one and you love the baby more, or even if she doesn't say it, if she's feeling any of that stuff, like pretend play that she's a baby. Like, a lot of people say their child reverts to baby behaviors and they get really frustrated.
Right.
But honestly, they do it because they just want to feel that connection with you that they see you having with this other baby. And so if we can give it to them in a way that works and then help meet that feeling without the binky or the bottle or the boob or the whatever signifies the habit to them of being a baby. And even the other thing she said about preschool is that for a lot of us, we get excited. We're like, you get to go to preschool. You're getting so big. You're so grown up. But then when there's a baby that gets snuggled all the time and held all the time and gets to stay home with mom or dad all the time or the babysitter all the time, and they have to go do this thing, it's actually kind of scary for them. So while I think it's great that we're really positive, I also think acknowledging that, like, this baby's deal looks pretty good, and you're asking me to do this other really scary thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Get here, and then you'll be next. Hey, Carmen, do you want to just hand it to her? She's going to go next. No, she's going to go, and then I was just keeping us queued up.
I have 4.5-year-old twin boys, and I'm going to have a baby in 2 weeks. And
Brave going for
I'm scared to death to have a baby mostly because of the twins. And one of them has become aggressive, more and more aggressive recently, and I'm just looking for tips of how to prepare and protect the rest of the family when he, the impulse control, hitting or throwing or whatever it is. He bites, but not much occasionally, so yeah.
I love Abby's question, too, of just what have you tried so far and what has felt effective or not effective. Oh man, you're bringing up so many things that I care deeply about. Welcoming new babies, sibling dynamics, and violence. We could have, again, an hour conversation about each of those things. What I hear you say about the two is interesting with the roles that they're taking on and how he is kind of presenting in that. So, of course, as parents, one thing I often think with siblings is if we can try and play coach versus referee, because a referee comes in and decides who did something right or wrong and makes the determination of who needs to apologize and do the foul or whatever. A coach comes in and knows that, for your boys, maybe they were building Legos and the compassionate one probably didn't do anything, but maybe he did take a Lego that he didn't even know was his brother's 5 times and the brother is losing it and so the biting or the hitting happens. But we didn't see all that stuff. We saw the hitting, which was the violation, and it's really easy to jump in on that kid. So in conflict, I find it really helpful for kids, especially who tend to go on the aggressive side, to not feel blamed, which is really hard when there's violence and you're creating safety, which is the most important thing. But when you can come in and try and hear from both kids, tell me more about what just happened. Tell me more about what just happened. Oh man, you were so frustrated because blah, 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 and so you hit, or you really wanted that toy, so you hit your brother. And for the brother, well, I was playing with it, I didn't do anything. You feel like you didn't really play a part, you feel sad that your brother hit you. Whatever it looks like, you're hearing both of them equally, even if there's actually one that has made a bigger mistake. But at least in that space, if he feels less judged, he might be more willing to get out of that space of just being mad and frustrated and coming down to feeling understood and heard and think about what he could do differently. And then, what was I going to say about that? Oh, I also think we talked a lot about underlying needs, but I also think there's this element of skill, and that's where role playing and practice can come in, where it's if the impulse control and something happens and his automatic reaction is to hit, that you have to do some practice, some pretend, some silly stuff with both the boys or just with him, and then it's special time with just him. Let's practice, watch, I'm going to take the toy. What are you going to say? And make it a silly thing, but then try and plant some seeds for real life situations. I don't know how or if that would ever feel right, but at least it would help him feel like you kind of get it, that you're just mad and it's really hard to know what to do. What would work, what wouldn't? And it sounds like he can do it out of the moment, just not in the moment. You want me to keep talking? I have one other thing. With welcome, I see, are there any other welcoming new babies? One of the very small things that I think is really helpful with as perceptive as our kids are is give ownership. So while you're pregnant, talk about your baby, tell lots of stories about when they were babies. These are all things that we've heard. But then when baby comes, there's some language that can be really helpful because they're going to be asked to wait a lot, and their needs are going to have to go on hold a lot more than they're used to because babies demand a lot of attention and you're real tired. But when the baby is calm and sleepy, having the baby like sitting there say, oh, sorry, baby. I mean, the baby doesn't need anything. Sorry, baby, I'll come help you in just a minute, but your brother really needs me. So showing that you're, instead of just always be like, I'll come help you in a minute, but I need to feed the baby. The other thing is eliminating that language. So if they need help, don't blame the baby. So if they need something, like, oh man, I really want to play that game with you. Can you set the timer for 5 minutes and I'll be right there? And make it about you, not like I have to go feed the baby or put the baby down for a nap, but just like you'll get to it. And if they can't handle it, try and include them as much. All of the things that you still see them equally. And then the last with a new baby and siblings that I love is this visual representation with a candle. So if you have a candle and you say, this is when I was just me, this was me and all the love and confidence, this was my heart that I had all for myself, and then I met your dad or your mom or your whoever, and I gave them my whole heart, I gave them all my love, but look, like love is this super cool thing where I still have all the love for myself and I gave it all to your dad. Now we had you two, like look at these two candles, we had them both at the same time, and look at this love, it is so amazing that it just grows. I don't even know how it grows. I didn't think it was possible, but look, all this love, and now here comes the new baby, and now all 4 of us get to give our love to this baby, but we still keep our own, and we still keep it for each other, and I have just as much love for you as I ever did. It might look different, it might feel different, but trust me, it's there. And that kind of visual ritual can just show them that you care and that you're thinking about how they might feel. And I think for some kids who are visual and ritualistic, it can just feel really nice. So I love that one.
I was just going to add the kind of like impulse control thing is just so normal, and people, like the prefrontal cortex of your brain isn't fully developed until you're 25, and so like the gas pedals of kids are just going without the brakes. And so I think sometimes parents, especially when their kids are like biting or hitting or more violence, are like worried that that's like predictive of how he's going to be, and it just, that's like such a normal kind of thing for young kids to do, and it developmentally will.
Yes, he will not grow up to be a violent, destructive human just because he's hitting his brother at 4.5.
Yeah, and his ability to know that it was wrong afterwards is, you know, like advanced for a 4-year-old. I think the other part with the like 5-step, like calming yourself, connecting to feelings, like the other part of that is just that we all get it wrong all the time, and that like it's never too late to kind of go back to the moment. Like if you calm down even that evening, that your kids like remember that something happened, and you can be kind then. Like it doesn't have to work in the 5-step plan for it to mean something to your kids.
There.
Hi. So I have a 11-month-old daughter and a 3.5-year-old son. And with a 3.5-year-old, about 6 months ago, we introduced potty training. And so he, pees in the potty, no problem. At nighttime, he wears pull-ups. But he only will poop when he's in a pull-up. So he kind of goes down for his nap, will wake up, go stand in the corner, poop. Same thing when he wakes up after nighttime, stand in the corner. And so I don't want to, make him feel bad for pooping the diaper, but we've had conversations just like, poop goes in the potty, or, we bring him in the bathroom next to the toilet to change his pull-up. So I guess I'm looking for guidance about how to encourage him to use the toilet, because he clearly knows when he has to go without making him feel embarrassed and, without kind of limiting his toilet behavior to just nap time and nighttime.
Start on this one, or
We're going for it too. Same thing.
Well, I mean, I think your idea of trying not to punish or shame is a good place to start, especially with toilet training. I mean, I think there's things you can try, like not doing the pull up at all, and then when he poops his pants, that can be pretty like uncomfortable, and he may be motivated to use the toilet, like because he has the skills to do that, and so like having a like poopy underwear is like quite uncomfortable, and so that can be sort of motivating to like try if you're willing to have the mess. And then I think like, you know, I'm a pediatrician, so I think about poop a lot, but like if kids get really constipated and it hurts, then sometimes that can like interfere with potty training, just because they like go in the corner and do their little squatting thing because it's actually like hurting when it comes out, and they have negative associations with pooping. So
Yeah,
like,
I think that might be part of it because when he was like 2 to 3, we worked through a lot of that before we even introduced it. So we've had a lot of conversations with our pediatrician.
yeah, and I mean, that also can just be like, it might take him some time before the poop is in the toilet, and that's okay. Like he's making lots of progress, but definitely making sure he's not constipated now so that he has new good feelings when he poops.
Yeah. I would just back that. Again, I don't have the medical expertise around this, but I certainly behaviorally, I'm also maybe the wrong person because I am a waiter. When it comes to potty training, it's only based on my personal experience with my children that potty training has happened late but very easily. So it's kind of a trade-off, and I think it depends on the values of your family and what feels important. And then in anything with kids, any way to help him feel in charge, in control, and not pressured, because small humans really don't like being pushed into doing anything. I mean, I don't know that any of us like being told what to do, but little humans especially, autonomy is their job, and right now they are trying to assert all independence that they possibly can. So if he feels a sense of control that like you want him to, it sounds like you've been very gentle, and it sounds very loving through all of it, so he probably might not feel that. But if he's feeling any pressure, there might be some like, well, I'm just going to keep doing this because I get to do it, and then we talk about it, and it's this big thing. So if there's a way, if it's okay that he continues to do it and it's not causing problems, and then again, the making poop easy, I think is probably, because if it's not, the whole thing will be harder. That might feel like a semi-unsatisfying answer, but any removal of power dynamic and...
We think it's a lot of control on his part.
Yeah.
But just good to hear that we're doing what we can.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a lot of it, right? We just have to feel like, okay, I can just breathe and let this happen. It will not last forever. I feel like everything in parenting, the good stuff or the bad stuff, like when it's good, you're like, yes, we've nailed this, and then it changes. Just like when things are hard. It's like, I can't handle this for one more minute, and then somehow it kind of dips and moves with our kids' development. But feeling good in the moment, sounds like you guys feel good in the moment, which is good, hopefully.
Hi, my daughter's going to be 6 in a couple months, and I've been struggling with this since she was about 7 months old, is getting her to sleep. Much like the other parent, where she was actually on a bottle till about maybe 2.5, because that would help her sleep. I mean, we started weaning off like milk, but it was just water. But even if it was just 1 ounce, she needed something to help her sleep. But for the last several years, the struggle has been she physically needs one of us there with her, holding her, for her to sleep. And the difference is we've tried, I mean, from screaming to, story times, I mean, everything you can think of. And it just doesn't seem to get any better. We've tried leaving her alone in the room, fine, just cry it out. She will cry it out for 3-4 hours. And it's a lot harder now because she has school the next day, so she can't just, before when she didn't have a schedule, it was like, whatever, we don't have a schedule the next day, you can sleep until whenever, but the reality is she has to wake up at a certain time to go to school. So, like I said, she's going to be 6, and even when we're there, it still takes about half an hour, 45 minutes to go to sleep, but it's definitely a very painful process for her, for us parents, we just are kind of at wit's end, and I feel like we've tried being super positive, the games, the storytelling, bribing, I mean, and yet none of it has been effective, and we're just not sure what to do.
Yes, sleep. Sleep is a whole ball game. Do you want me to go first? Yeah, these ones are really hard, especially without knowing the kids. There is a physician here who I really admire, Dr. Maida Chen. She's a sleep expert. I wish she were here with us because I think she would probably have some really interesting perspectives. One challenging thing is that for a lot of kids, sleep onset association and that learned skill of falling asleep independently happens pretty early. So by 6 to 9 months, after 9 months, there is association with like, this is where I sleep, these are the sounds, this is the song I sing that gets me sleepy, this is the book I read. So it gets more challenging, according to what I've learned from her, it gets more challenging the older kids get because of that window of triggering sleep habits. But it's so hard when they're little to build all those things. So it sounds like, one, you have a really nice connection with her if she wants you to be there, if she feels comforted and safe with you there. I always love hearing that there's something to be celebrated, but it sounds like from what you're sharing, it's gotten to the point where it does not feel like a positive connecting moment at that time.
It's past that.
Yeah, yeah. I can hear that, and I can totally imagine that. Okay. I would ask more reflective questions if we had more time, so I'm just going to ramble out a bunch of stuff and hope that it feels helpful, and then please jump in if something doesn't feel in sync with where you are. The only one question I want before we go is, out of the things you've tried, what leaves you feeling the best? Like at the end of the night when she's asleep in bed.
I mean, well, she's actually not a very physical kid. Like, she's not big on hugs and kisses in the daytime.
Yeah.
So at nighttime, that's kind of where she wants the extra cuddles. And so it's very hard for me to say no, because that really is the only time that she's like, okay, Mom, this is it. We're going to cuddle it up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she's using it as a weapon against me, but it's effective, right?
She knows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it's a little bit manipulative.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, she's 6, and I just don't want her to have sleep issues.
Totally.
I have sleep issues, and it's terrible, so I don't want her to have sleep issues.
Yeah, but that's good to hear, that those moments when, even though you're exhausted and annoyed and frustrated, out of all the strategies you've tried, it does feel the best when you stay connected with her. So I guess that's the challenge. And sleep, to me, is such a tricky one because it takes a lot of parental confidence, and I think a lot of planning that involves co-parents in agreement and helping your child buy in, but I think it's one of the hardest ones to have your kid help develop. But at 6, I think she might be able to come up with some ideas. So if you, again, like this family, come to the table, let's talk this through, conversation about like, okay, your dad and I have decided, like, we have not been helping you as much as we can to go to sleep on your own. Like, own it, even if it's not your responsibility. Sometimes just like owning it, that she's not doing anything wrong, she's not failing. Like, we feel like we really can help you because I have a hard time sleeping as a grown-up. How can we help you sleep at 6? And if she's not into that kind of stuff, where do I want to go with this? I think the biggest thing is maybe some, like, getting into her head, and if that's her time when she's like, oh, I can get Mom to go along with whatever, like, ploy I have, that she feels really powerful and really important. So figuring out a way to translate that feeling of power and importance into a behavior that fits with what you're looking for. So how can she feel proud? How can she feel accomplished? And if the, like, long stretches don't work, is there something you could do where, like, I'm going to snuggle you for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to leave for 2 minutes. And if you lay calmly and quietly for 2 minutes and, like, have the magic word, I'm going to come back, so that she still trusts that you're there. She trusts that you're going to be there. Is there a clock? Is there something that she could have, like the lights shining on the ceiling, that would be a distraction or make her feel that sense of comfort? Is there a time limit that you would be willing to stay? So it's thinking about what you feel comfortable with and then what she feels like she's getting some power and control to feel good about. And then also the habits. Like, it's not, if she has never gone to sleep independently, it's a skill. It's something she's going to have to practice and learn. And if you try something, it has to be consistent for a while. So even if it feels like it's not working and it's hard, it has to be like 2 weeks. Like, you and your husband have to be like all in. This is what we're doing. We talk to her, we talk to each other for 2 weeks. Even if it feels way worse than it did before, we are doing this thing for 2 weeks.
And would something like would it benefit, since she's 6, to even see a sleep specialist, since they're generally for babies?
I feel like, Abby, you probably know more in extreme cases.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I really like Anne's idea of sort of, like, I wouldn't want you to lose that kind of like cuddle time with her if that is meaningful for both of you, and to like maintain that and then have like a break, but her knowing that you're going to come back, and like giving her some power over bedtime. And, you know, like at her age, she'll be able to understand all of that. And I would try that. But I think having that you've been going through this since she was like 7 months old and now she's 6, and I think it would be totally reasonable to see a sleep specialist.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if you have a challenging sleep history, if there's,
I'm
I mean,
sorry,
I
what was
don't
the
even know.
question?
Oh, I was saying, if you have a history of sleep challenges, if there's, I mean, hormonal impacts
I do, but I
on
don't
sleep,
think it's related.
and
Like,
got it.
mine is just
It feels like it's more
personal issues,
behavioral
but
for her.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, hers is, I don't know what hers is.
I'd be really interested.
I think you could start with your pediatrician or see a specialist, but I would like try to do something about it for your own.
For my sanity. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
And she'll know if you're confident and assured and you're doing it for you and for her. I think it's really good for our kids to see that we do things to take care of ourselves. I think it's a good model to set, that we are able to set boundaries, because like, this is good for your dad and I to have time. Like, we're happier parents if we can have some time together after you go to bed, or whatever that looks like. There's some opportunity. Sounds like you're being very patient and loving, which is impressive.
So, some reassurance for Anne's technique. So actually, we had a session. We had another parenting network, and I actually applied some of these things. So one, my son had eczema, so we had to figure out that. So he was itching in the middle of the night. So our pediatrician was like, "Okay, hydrocortisone at night." So it actually was waking him up, and so hydrocortisone, and then some Aquaphor, and that was helping him. So we always have to slather him before he goes to bed. And then the second. Right. And then the second thing, we actually tried some of the things that Anne suggested in this last year. I think that was like a year or two ago, and it was a power struggle. So it was giving my son, some power, as far as like, okay, I do need to do some things. Like, your dad and I need to wash the dishes, help do some cleanup. I will be back. We're going to snuggle. I'll be back in 2 minutes. And then you kind of keep stretching it out. You have to make sure, whether they're asleep or not asleep, that you did do that. Because I'm like, remember, I said I'd do it. And I did it. And then eventually he phased out with, okay, it's 40 minutes later. But I'm like, look, he finally fell asleep. So we just made it longer and longer. And yes, he was still getting up. And I'm like, okay, it hasn't been 2 minutes. I said I would check on you in 2 minutes. And so it was. Eventually he was, and I'm not saying that it's 100%, but it did help out with many times. Sometimes I still like go into the bed and I fall asleep there. Yeah. And then in the morning I'm like, whoa, I'm still there. But it was helpful to have him feel some power, and those techniques did. I want to reassure you that some of those, that was successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was very kind of you to share that.
I have a almost 3-year-old and a
Yeah. This is one of my favorite topics, but I definitely come with some bias, so just take that for what it's worth. Obviously, we all want to keep our kids safe, right? Yeah. I am actually not great at safety. Like, I am not super observant. When I drive, I have a clean driving record, but I'm always like, oh gosh, there's a car there, that kind of stuff. So with 4 kids, you can see how that would be a problem. So for me, it really looks like a lot of teaching and a lot of practicing. So we used to live in Ballard, where every block is an opportunity for practice. So on the sidewalks, there's like a U thing. And for us, it looked like I'm not like we were holding my hand all the time because of my belief in respect and autonomy and learning and being independent, which for some parents, especially if you feel anxious about safety, it's totally fine to have your safety be like, all right, buddy, we're going on a walk, you get to hold my hand. So again, it all comes down to what feels good to you and what feels right to you. But to me, it looks like a lot of practice. Like, okay, where's the spot? All right, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, hop on the spot. And practicing and talking about like cars go in the street, people go on the sidewalk, let's practice. And then you find a block that like there's no cars, or you practice with a line on the sidewalk in front of your house. And you say, all right, show me your waiting spot, and you have him show you and look at you and be like, I got it. Something to make it like they're in charge, and then you kind of gotta trust them a couple times. And they might like run past their waiting spot, and that's when you get to yell or run or grab, and they might be scared or frightened, but then you get to come back and be like, oh, that was a scary one, but I know you know where your waiting spot is. Can you show me again? And then have them like show you, and just every single, all right, we're getting close to the end of the block, where's your waiting spot? And when you're out in the world, you hope that some of that translates, that you don't run out into the street or whatever. And it's, again, how you feel comfortable with safety, but going back to all the things that I really do believe around helping our kids gain confidence in their bodies, gain confidence in themselves, I tend to try and have as few rules as possible around safety, and I let them climb up trees that are probably taller than they should climb, because that works for me. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But I do want my kids, instead of saying, be careful, be careful, be careful, I want to ask, does that feel safe? Like, you're making me really nervous. How do you feel? And having them pause. And at least for my kids' temperament, all the things might be different. They do some crazy, Meridian Park, do you guys know Meridian Park, those swings? My daughter and her friend, like 6-year-olds, like will climb to the very top, and I'm about to have a heart attack. And there are other times when she's like, this doesn't feel safe, and she climbs down. So some of that release of power and control around safety can just be another thing, like we've talked about, a moment of pause. Is this because I'm scared? Is it because they're actually in danger? Or is it because it's a cultural norm, or I feel like I need to control them or tighten my rein on them? And just having that moment of curiosity about what the real danger is. Does that make sense? Was that actually what your question was?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more kind of like street, road,
Yeah.
playground scenario. I kind of tend to feel a little bit like the natural consequences of sometimes better teaching. But I'm not saying if I'm flipping balls off the swing, but
Oh, right.
I think you can only say it so many times, and then he really does remember when things have not gone well for him. But I just feel very, very concerned about him running into the street,
Yeah.
the road, going on a walk, and going to the end of the block and not stopping.
Yeah.
It feels like it's, I don't have that confidence that
He'll do it.
where you stop,
Yeah.
I know that he'll do it.
Yeah. So how does it feel now? What are you trying now?
Well, usually I park my car at the end of our driveway, so like you can't really get past it.
Yep.
It's not a complete barrier, but
It slows him down, so he
yeah,
can't.
a little bit. I try and put like barriers in between, but
Yeah.
I don't really have a good solution.
Yeah. I think it is a tricky one because parents have different thresholds and kids have different temperaments of what works.
I think it's especially hard to now that my daughter's kind of mobile, and it's like I just feel like I'm going to turn around and help one kid, and then
Yes. Yeah.
You know, something risky, not just
Yeah.
like, oh, that's an annoying behavior, but like a risky.
Dangerous. Yeah.
I mean, I think I would.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
What are you going to say, Abby?
Well, my bias is working at Harborview at a trauma center, and
Yes.
so I mean, I think that sort of your like feeling about that, you should sort of trust with your own kid. I think you know, like a lot of safety things come just from the environment, like bicycle helmets and car seats, and having it that your kids can't fall out of windows, or like the big things that hurt 3-year-olds. But I think there's lots of ways for your kid to like experience risk and learning, like a playground or a quiet street, where you can be teaching and explaining that stuff, or like in a, you know, a mall or somewhere where he can't actually get hit by a car. But I think your instinct about like street safety, like that's a real fear that I don't, my perspective, that's not, he doesn't need to learn it at 3, like where they don't, like their brains aren't there yet to get the risk, and they like see something and get excited and like jolt away from you. So I
Yeah,
think.
I hope I didn't express that. I think I maybe
No, I wasn't
did.
disagreeing
Oh,
with you. I
okay.
just
All of a
was
sudden I was like, oh,
validating
geez,
your-
I hope I didn't say that by like
No,
letting
no.
you practice.
No, you didn't. No, I think,
Yeah.
but I think that's okay. Like, it's okay to be a little more safety conscious when there's actual risk. And I think like swimming, lakes, cars are real ways that kids get hurt when they're 3 years old. And so.
I just, on the surface is kind of like, there's, with this age of, you know, 9 months and 3, it's like, it feels like whatever we do is like, don't do that, it's just trying to keep them
Yeah.
like alive.
Yes.
Not just like good behavior, but just like, oh my God, you know, there's
Yeah. There's cars everywhere too. Like in Seattle, there's not very many quiet streets to just practice.
it just feels like there's a lot of like just, you know, there's something new in our home, I feel like every day where it's like, oh, that's not safe, or,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, you're just like in a really hard age with 2 kids, and like
Their
eventually it'll
job is to
be
explore.
pass. Like it'll pass, but you do have to keep them safe.
yeah,
And you're not being like overbearing, or they're not going to not learn
yeah,
from doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
tricky.
Yes. Tricky is right. So we're actually over time. I'm not sure what Abby's time looks like. I'm happy to hang out for maybe 10 more minutes if anyone wants to come up and chat, but I totally respect that it is getting very late and you should all go home and get a good night's sleep. But thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you all for coming.
Thank you for being with us tonight.